Howdy, ladies and gentlemen. This is Paul, the Redneck Thinker. Thomas Jefferson said, "If you want something you've never had, you must be willing to do something you've never done." Benjamin Franklin said, "Without continual growth and progress, such words as improvement, achievement, and success have no meaning." Basically, get off your duff, get to working, you've got dreams, you've got goals, you've got to do what it takes to get them. Like, subscribe, comment, show what your opinion is. Let me know if you like what you've seen. And I thank you for your support. Now, y'all are probably going to be wondering why this belongs in a political discussion. Y'all are also probably wondering, well, you discuss politics and history. Why are you bringing up this topic? We need to start getting in our heads what it is that folks have wrong with them. You think I'm joking with you? I'm not. There are forms of child abuse that people don't consider child abuse. You don't get the kids taken away from you if you're doing this to kids. But let me tell you something. It is going to cause all kinds of issues for these kids. If you don't think so, start paying attention. Listen to what I'm going to say, and then realize that as you meet these people out in the world, or you hear about these people that do things, you're going to start realizing, I'm not wrong. And it shapes the political discussion from that point. You think I'm joking, and I'm not. I'm really not. People have to understand that there are certain types of people out there that are raising kids. They do the legal minimums, but they don't go beyond that, and they actually hurt the kid by doing these things that I'm going to describe. And when these people grow up and are interacting with others, you start to notice that they can't interact the same way that everybody else does. And that leads to all kinds of weird things. So, let's take a look at it. We're going to start with one that most people don't realize happened. When you're a kid, you build your little friend groups, and you don't pay attention to anybody else. You don't think about the kids, or when you do think about them, you think about them as being exceedingly weird. The ones that don't have friends, they don't go out and do much. Nobody goes to visit them. They're rarely seen outside of school. Well, they might get a job when they're older. There are parents who don't want their kids to have friends. This sounds strange, but it's the truth. They don't want their kids to interact with others. They want to keep them in the house. Matter of fact, some of these parents continuously ground their kids so that they won't go out. Oh, you're being punished. And as soon as they're done with that punishment, they get grounded again for something else that they do. And they keep grounding them. They don't want their kids interacting with other people. They don't want their kids having friends. If they start getting friends, then the parents start reacting badly. This is an actual issue. parents cut their kids off from other kids. And some of them don't even think about it. They go, "Oh, I'm protecting them. I don't want them to learn any behaviors that are bad for them." And they basically get them cut off from society. They might have some limited interaction, but for the most part, they're cut off. Well, that hurts them socially developing. This hurts them being able to communicate. It hurts them in so many different ways. And it really is. It's a silent abuse. And you're starting to see a lot of this happen now. You've got the COVID issues. Before that, kids were cutting themselves off. They were only interacting with people online. Seriously, think about it. How many of these kids, now parents are starting to realize it. Now you're starting to see videos. And there are still people that interact. But how many of these kids do you see that aren't getting out there? And I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, these kids that are learning how to program and whatnot, that's important skills. Going outside, getting some sun for vitamin D or whatever, interacting with other people face to face is far more important early on. I'm not saying that you shouldn't let them read or study or whatnot, but I am saying that they need to learn how to interact with people. Let them be part of things, because these kids are not interacting with other people in an intelligent fashion. Part of it was because their parents didn't want them to. But this is the first one. For kids to be taken out of a home, they have, when it comes to anything verbally, it has to be basically verbal abuse. You're calling your kids certain words, that kind of thing. Silence, silent disapproval. You could even have a neutral approach to your kid. I'm not saying you're being abusive, as in you're calling them names and stuff, but this happens in certain single-parent households. Usually it's only the single-parent childhoods that this happens in, where the parent starts to realize at certain points that they weren't able to take a job promotion because of their kid, and this starts to get them to resent the kid. And the parent's not wanting to be verbally abusive. They still maybe love the kid, and I do stress maybe. And so they just treat the kid, barely interact with them. There are no smiles. There's no, "Hey, you did this, let's celebrate it." It's not a full-on disconnect, but it basically is, but it's not something that can be seen from the outside world. And every now and then, there's little drops of passive aggressiveness. Now, most of the time, it's not aggressive or anything, but the parent will mention, "Oh, my life would have been so much better if I didn't have you," or something that's said in a way similar to that isn't as harsh. Kids pick up on this. And if a parent isn't celebrating the kids' milestones. I'm not even saying participation trophies. I'm talking about when the kid actually, does certain things. They get a play or and that they're excited about and the parent doesn't show up. This causes the kid to, it's not necessarily a self-esteem issue, the kid doesn't want to interact. Because if they're interacting with people, then they're going to feel like, it's not like my contribution's worth anything to anybody anyway. I'm not saying that every day you have to treat your kid like you're bouncing off the walls happy. What I am going to say is that you need to show your kids some kind of affirmation. Because if you don't, they're going to become lazy. They're not going to work for certain goals. They're going to look around and go, why should I work for it? Nobody cares. And this is a form of abuse without it being real. And this also happens, sadly. Normally this is a single parent household thing. Something else to think about. You have these 2-parent homes, but both parents are working these high demand jobs. Both parents think that the other parent is interacting with their kids in a way that, everything's hunky-dory. When neither parent isn't interacting with the kid in a way that is in any way, shape, or form hunky-dory. This is a real thing as well. So just think about it. That disconnect from the people that you're supposed to love, and the kid will try to do all kinds of things, but in the end, they just start. It kills them inside. Now, this last attitude, way too many of you parents have this attitude, or people that have been parents that their kids are already grown up. Your kids don't owe you shit for growing up. You raise your kids correctly because they're your offspring. If you think your kids owe you anything, you're already going into it with the wrong attitude. Your kids don't owe you anything. Remember that. Quit thinking that they do. Quit taking your kids' money. One of the favorite things to do by this group of people is to, when their kids are working, they're taking their kids' money. Oh, you owe me. I raised you. They're not going to spend that much money on the kid because you owe me. I don't owe you. That whole general attitude of, I'm raising you, you owe me, causes you to look at your parent-child dynamic as a business arrangement. A kid can't pick their parents. A kid doesn't pick whether they're born in this world. That's the stupidity of abortion. Everybody's like, my body, my choice. No, it's not your body. That child inside of you, that's their body that is being killed. That's their life that's being taken. That's the insidiousness of eugenics and abortion. It causes people to think, oh, well, I let you live, so you owe me. No, they don't owe you anything. A kid has one responsibility. That's to try to grow up in a way that they had fun and are learning. And the way that that is done is by having a parent that is worth a flip and is not treating their kid like they are some check mark on on the IRS document. Because then these kids are not learning how to manage their money. They don't have a concept of money. And then these kids are going out in the real world and they're actually having to get jobs, and they get these jobs and they're, okay, their personal life, whatever with the cost, but they're the ones that are shaping how these businesses do. And these kids don't, and these people don't have a concept about money, and it turns into so much different. So, your kid doesn't owe you shit. Remember that. You owe your kid a chance to grow up, not just to be a check mark on that IRS, for the IRS. If you're wondering why people act the way that they do, how their parents raise them is an indication. But here's the thing. What people think of as abuse towards kids isn't all that there is. But it doesn't necessarily mean that these kids need to be taken out of the homes. It means that the parents might just need to have like a little kick in the ass. If you think about it. If a kid is disconnected from the world, other than what they have to do by law, that kid's going to have a skewed way that they look at how they interact with people. Do you think these people are giving you a good interaction? You know, you go online nowadays and you see these interactions and these people just, and there are people in the real world that are the same way. They have no concept because they weren't allowed to develop true friendships. They don't really trust people. So they basically use people. Or they're disconnected from their parents. Their parents disconnected from them. That disconnect, the dynamic between a child and a parent's the most important dynamic. If you disconnect from your kid, you end up with all kinds of bad scenarios. Or if you're taking money from your kid, or if you're telling them, you owe me. All of these things, these kids are not necessarily going to be killers. These kids are not necessarily going to go out and break the law. They could actually be productive members of society, but they have a skewed view of the world, and they're shaping the world. You shape the world around you. Now, think about a guy or girl who didn't grow up understanding how to have friends, who didn't get to go spend the night with that many people, didn't have people come over to their house. Think about those kids that their parents are disconnected from them, and so their way of understanding how to act with the world, even from a young age, they think is to keep your face in a phone or whatnot. They're not seeing the real world. And here I'm going to give you an example of where this really comes into play. How many of these people nowadays think that all these racist things are happening out in the world? Oh, systemic racism and all this. When you go out in the really real world, you start to realize, hey, that ain't happening at all. You go into a workplace is everybody treats you pretty much the same. They don't care what your skin color is. They don't care what your gender is. They just want you to get your job done so they don't have to do that. They don't have to do it. When cops interact with people, they don't care what your skin color is. If you're homeless, they really don't care what your skin color is. I live in Virginia Beach, Virginia. There are more homeless people that are white around here that I have seen. I'm not been to the shelters or whatnot, but just walking, I walk at night. Why? Because less chance of some of these idiots running me over. Wait. Seriously, some of these people in Virginia Beach need to learn how to drive. But some of these areas have homeless in them that I go walking by. Are there black people that are homeless? Yes. Are there white people that are homeless? Actually, most definitely, there are far more white people. Why? I guess because the black community here in Virginia Beach are more likely to help their neighbors. Us white folk don't help each other all that often. Well, at least in big cities. Small towns, actually not as much as you'd think. So, if these things that I've just talked to you about, kid having their money taken as they're growing up, how much you want to bet this is not the person you want running your business? Even though they're probably smart, they had to figure a way to live through life with the parent that, basically turned them into a business asset, a tax deduction. These kids are probably not, these kids that become these adults don't understand what they're doing when it comes to business. They don't understand how to set prices. This isn't a latchkey situation. Latchkey kids, most of the ones that I knew, were told, hey, go in. They did their stuff. The parents would come home and actually interact with them. It wasn't that they didn't want their kids doing, they didn't want to know about their kids. They were just like, hey, go become a gang. You go out there and play stickball or play basketball or ride your bikes in stupid places. This is how BMX got created. This is how all these X Game sports got created. You had kids that weren't without parental supervision. And my generation of kids went, hey, let's see what kind of stupidity we can do. And look what we created. That's different because most of the time those parents actually interacted with their kids. They just, hey, all those kids are out there. That's what kids were doing. Everybody was fine in most places. But the problem is that there are kids that you didn't see out with these kids. That was the problem. Now, you're probably wondering what this has to do with politics. Think about what each one of these scenarios that I just told you about, because they're real. Parents actually do this to their kids. Now, imagine what these kids, once they've grown up, how they're interacting with you and others in the really real world. This is why you're seeing politics shaping up the way it is. This is why you're seeing the world shape up the way that you're seeing. This nation allowed ourselves to get to a point where both parents have to be out and working to be able to have anything. This keeping up with the Joneses attitude. This, hey, everything that you buy has to have 50 million hidden taxes because the government needs money. For what reason, nobody knows, but the government keeps claiming that they need all this money for all these special projects. And so that raises the price of everything. Yes, this is what's going on in the really real world. And these people that were abused in this way, it wasn't abuse in the classic sense. But do you honestly think that these kids that grew up this way are functioning adults that are valid functioning adults? This has been Paul, Redneck Thinker. Y'all think about all this, and y'all have a good day. Bye now.